Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Black Sheep Knitter podcast. My name is Sarah. I'm coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin, and on this channel we will be looking at my complete and utter obsession with fiber arts. It'll be mostly knitting because that is the current thing that I am like super hyper fixated on, but I also do some crocheting. Back in the olden times I used to spin, I do needlepoint and cross stitch, and I quilt and I sew. So really, basically, if there's a piece of fiber somewhere in the mix, I do those things. Today, however, I only have some knitting for you because I've decided to focus on what I was most excited about this past week. But first, let's talk about what I'm wearing. So this is the Hipster cowl by Joji Locatelli. I started this back in September because I love a cowl. It's kind of a joke now in my knitting group. But I saw that Joji was having this fall 2022 cowl. I think she does it every fall, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how many years it's been going. But I actually had intended to make the Hipster shawl. And I looked through the categories, and one of the categories was small objects, something like that. This isn't small. Well, you'll see that in a minute, but I thought it would be less knitting than knitting the shawl, and so I picked the cowl. I absolutely love it. The yarn is Malabrigo Rios in the colorway Illusion. First of all, I'm completely and utterly obsessed with Rios. If I could literally make everything in my wardrobe out of Rios, I would. It's kind of weird to me because like I've purchased like their sock yarn, their bulky yarn. I think there's also something else called worsted. I don't think I've seen that in person. I've only really seen the Rios, which is a worsted weight. But I just love it. Like it's so like smooshy and soft, and just like the colors are always amazing. So yeah, I definitely am a Rios fan, and there's going to be more Rios in my future. But the thing that's really weird about this cowl is the color. So I don't know if this happened to folks back in September like it happened here in Wisconsin, but there was like a total run on Rios. Like there was no Rios to be found in like anybody's shop. So like I would walk in and there'd be like a skein here, a skein there. It's like a little Rios graveyard. And it was like super stressful because I had decided I was going to do this cowl, and I had picked my project and I calculated how much yardage I thought I was going to need. And I said, all right, I just need 3 skeins of Rios. And so I went into each of my local yarn stores and I was like, well, there's a skein, there's 2 skeins. Nobody had 3 skeins of one color that I liked. And so I went to my local store, which is just down the street. Shout out to Fiddlesticks in Madison, Wisconsin. And they had 2 colors. One color, I don't even remember what it was, but I knew I was like, absolutely not. And then they had this color, and on the shelf, it was like brown. And I was like, I don't wear brown. But then I was also like, but this is 3 skeins of Rios, and if I'm going to do this Joji Locatelli fall cowl, I don't want to be late trying to order some Rios off the internet and like waiting however long for that to show up. So then I thought, all right, let me try to make this work. So the person that was working at the shop at the time and I were both kind of staring at it and kind of like, it is kind of brown, isn't it? Well, it's also kind of purple, but it's all, And then I was like, let's go outside. So we grabbed the skeins and we like force marched it outside, put it up in the sun, and we're kind of like, you know, and I was like, it's kind of purpley brown, so it'll be fine. It'll be fine, and we're just gonna do it, and it'll be fine. And also, literally, there's no other Rios. There's like nothing else in the city. So I bought it, and then I started knitting it, and whatever trickery or sorcery was happening, I wonder if it was some other knitter who wanted this Rios for themselves, because as soon as I started knitting it, I looked at it and I was like, that's not brown. Why did I think this was brown? I'm brown. Yes, this knot is purple. It's very much purple. Yes, it's got some browny it's purple. So anyway, I love the color. So as much as I was in the store, like, hating on it and being like, this is going to be the ugliest cowl ever, it's my most favorite item at the moment. Now, of course, that changes literally every week. So, I mean, but it's so warm and soft and smooshy, and the color is perfect, and I love the detailing. So let me show you kind of the cool crossovers. So this is kind of like the fun part of this shawl, is that you get these garter stitch panels, you have these like crossover sections, and then there's kind of like this weird like knits and pearls section, but the yarn I chose, you really can't see it very clearly, so it almost like kind of doesn't matter. And then you finish it off with these like little tiny like fringe accents, which I thought was super adorable. So I entered it. I finished it at the end of October. I was trying to finish it early because, well, you guys probably are aware that some things went down in October. There's some shenanigans in October. I was trying to head it off. I did not finish, but I did finish by the end of October, so it's fine. I still got it done. And the cowl, I believe, ends in like 2 or 3 days, like on the 30th of this month, November. So it's fine. But I entered it in the small objects category. And let me just show you. Still going. Oh, there we go. It is not a small item. Now, I think generally speaking, when folks talk about cowls, they're not this big. This is like kind of like a scarf shawl that's joined together. In fact, that is literally how it is knit. It's basically like a long rectangle of fabric that you then like seam together. What was it? I don't remember how I actually put it together. I don't think I grafted. Oh no, there were live stitches, so I think I did graft it together, Kitchener. Anyway, it doesn't really matter because honestly, I don't do cowls to win prizes. I don't know if that's weird. I feel like when I started doing them, like in the like late 90s, early 2000s, were there prizes? Somebody let me know, because I don't remember there being like a bunch of prizes or like really anything. It was just like the camaraderie of knitting the same stuff together over a certain time period. So that's kind of why I do them. But like I literally was thinking like, man, I hope other people that chose this as their small object weren't hoping to win, because they probably took a lot longer than people making like hats and scarves and mittens and socks or whatever they were doing. And those people probably entered like a bunch of stuff. So, but I'm not trying to win. So it doesn't really matter to me that it's gigantic. And also I love the fact that I can put it on and wear it kind of as like a hangy thing, but I also can like bloop, have like a whole nother like, anyway, so this is the Hipster cowl by Joji Locatelli. Totally recommend it. It is very easy, simple knit, and it is big impact. Like every time I wear this somewhere, people are like, oh, I love your shawl. And I'm just like, great, thanks. So yeah. Okay, so I don't have any finished objects for you because it's my first episode and you haven't seen me work on anything so far, so there's nothing to have finished. However, I do have a bunch of things in progress. Not as many to show you because, as I'm sure y'all also do, there's things that aren't really like in progress, right? There are things that are like in the closet. I don't really count those. Just say things that I've worked on this week. Because like, we don't talk about the things that we stash in the car, under the bed, in the bathroom, like those don't count. So we're only going to talk about the ones that count, which are the ones I touched this week. So first off, I wanted to talk about honestly, this is kind of a finished object. It's kind of a finished object. But it's a very sad story. It's a very sad story. So this is, let me pull it up for you. Get kind of the full effect. This is the Snowy Forest by Midori Hirose, I believe. Hopefully I said that correctly. My Japanese is super rusty. So anyway, this is knit in Plymouth yarn, Homestead Tweed, and charcoal. And I absolutely adore this sweater. Like, I love it so much. It's so soft and drapey, but warm and like fuzzy, but not too fuzzy. The tweed like really elevates the pattern, I think, and gives it kind of like a classic, but also edgy look, which is kind of interesting with the huge chunky cables. The thing that's interesting about this is that normally I don't swatch. I did for this, mostly because I couldn't get gauge. And why couldn't I get gauge? Because I was using like the wrong needles. And I was like, look, I have so many pairs of needles and I don't really want to buy anymore. So let me just try with the size that I was using, which ended up being 10.5, US 10.5. And I loved how the fabric felt. So then I thought I could go get some more needles in the 9 or whatever the pattern calls for. But really, I like how this feels. So let me just like do some math. So I did a lot of math, like a lot. I was trying to fit a 42-inch bust, roughly. It kind of fluctuates, but you know, close enough. But with the gauge that I was getting, I ended up having to go down to a medium 1, which is like quite a difference, because I think normally I would have expected to make the extra large maybe. So I went down to a medium 1, I knit it. I think it came out pretty great, but here's the other thing that like kind of tripped me up. So I have a very short torso. I think my torso is like 12 inches from like shoulder to waist, which is absurd because like that, I mean, I'm literally like a full grown human. I'm like 5'5", but 12 inches of like that's, I don't even understand, but whatever. I have very long arms. So I think my body was like, we'll just give you the length for your height and your legs and your arms, but it like forgot to keep making my torso, which actually is like a blessing and a curse because it means sweaters go very quickly, like very quickly. And I usually don't need nearly as much yarn as is called for in the pattern. So like, that's kind of great. But the curse part is that when I knit things that are kind of like untraditional, non-traditional, they don't always behave the way that I would expect them to. So the problem with this is that, as you can see, the yoke is very, very deep. Like it's very deep. And so when I got to the end of these cables for the yoke to split for the arms, I was at my waist already. And I kind of was like, oh, that's interesting. Now, I haven't made a super deep yoked sweater before. I've made lots of yoke sweaters, but not ones where the yoke is like 12 inches, right? So, and I read, of course, after the fact, I went through Ravelry and I looked at people's projects and a lot of people were like, oh yeah, I removed like 2 rows from each cable and I was like, oh, that's a great idea. But also I'm done with the cables now and it took forever and I'm not going back, especially for some of those increases because they were a struggle. So I was like, yeah, I hear what they're saying. And like, maybe if I make this the next time, do a little bit of subtracting of the rows and the cables. But for now, I'm gonna make this work because it's gonna be fine. Folks, it's not fine. It is not fine. So basically what happened is that I ended the yoke at my waist. I added like a couple of more rows because I didn't want to go from like the cable to the ribbing because I thought that would look weird. So I added like maybe 4 to 6 rows and then did the ribbing and was like, oh, this actually is hitting me exactly where I want. It looks amazing. Very soft, very smooshy, fabulous. Then I put it on and was like, this is even better than I expected. So good. And then I raised my arm and like my whole chest basically was exposed. So I took it to knit night and I said, folks, what do I do? And everyone said, huh, that's interesting. Can't you just wear like a tank top underneath? And I said, well, I could. And they said, yeah, I would just do that because you've already finished the body and like it's hitting where you want. So like really the only weird thing is just like where the sleeve starts. And I said, that's very true. That is very true. Because since it's a 12-inch yoke, when you split for the sleeves, you're also splitting for the sleeves down by your waist. Now, those of you who are seasoned knitters can probably see where this is going. If your sleeve starts at your waist, let me just put this on so that you can see what the problem is. Because when I tell you that I have tried wearing this with so many different things underneath, and I've tried like not moving my body very much because I'm like, but I'm done, I'm finished, I'm done. And I just want to wear it. But then I like start moving my arms and I'm like, yeah, this is not, let me just put it on. You'll understand. You'll understand. Okay. Okay, so first of all, let's just talk about this fit, okay? So you can see that it is fitting my shoulders very nicely. The cables are like great, which I really like. I love this sweater. This like pattern and yarn combination is like the greatest combination of 2022 for me. Like I've knit a lot of things this year. This is the greatest, which I kind of didn't expect because I picked up this yarn on a whim at my local yarn store, mostly because it was tweed and it was cheap. And I thought, oh, maybe that would be kind of fun to make that sweater in the tweed. And it's like pretty cheap yarn. And like I've been knitting a lot of very expensive things of late, and it might be nice to not do that for like everything. But this Plymouth yarn Homestead tweed, listen, you'll see this again because I'm obsessed with it. But let's get back to the fit problem, right? So this is fitting like I want. My arms, kind of weird. Now, if I just kind of pivot, boop, 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 do you see that? This is my hem. That's supposed to be down at my waist. It's very much in my armpit. And then you got this like very weird like hem. And then if I lift both arms, oh look, no. No. So I appreciate all of the people trying to save me the horrors of ripping back. The hem's coming off, folks. I have to cut the hem off and add more length because as much as I feel like, yes, you didn't see anything just now because I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt underneath, like that's not weird. Y'all don't think I think that's incredibly weird. To raise your, like, imagine if I'm like at a bar and I'm watching like a basketball game or I don't know, something, and I'm like, oh, and it's, oh, no. So I can't wear it like this. I'm sad because it's a beautiful sweater. And honestly, I'm done and I've moved on emotionally to other things that I'm knitting. But knitting is not just process for me, it's also the garment. And like, this is too nice of a garment to allow it to stay like this, because I am absolutely not going to wear this the way that it is. And I think sometimes we get so excited about finishing things that we just kind of finish, and then we're not happy with the finish. And then we're like, it's okay, I'll get used to it and I'll still wear it. And then you don't wear it. It goes in your closet or like wherever you put things that you don't really wear, that you pretend like you wear, and you don't wear it. And like, what is like all of that time invested and you don't have a wearable garment? So I'm not allowing that to happen to this beautiful, soft, squishy sweater. So I'm gonna cut the hem off. I'm gonna add 3, 4, 5, I don't know, inches to the body, which means that I won't get my like super cute cropped sweater that I really wanted. But also I won't have my boobs out, which feels like the move. Feels like the right thing to do. So that's what I'm gonna do. So this isn't done, but it will be. I had to look for a bunch of videos on like how to like add length to a finished sweater. And I saw some very weird tutorials, not gonna lie. Saw some very weird things. I think what I'm gonna do is like, I have those like are they called barber poles? Like the like kind of weird silicone things that you can use to like keep your stitches on. I have a bunch of those. I even bought like the thick size. So like any US 8+, I think you can use these with, which I love because I tried using the smaller ones and they did not stay on those tips. So I think what I'm gonna do is use those to pick up stitches along the top portion of the sweater that I'm gonna add to. And then I'm gonna use another one to pick up a couple of rows above the ribbing. And then I'm gonna cut between them. And then that way, I have the two pieces, they're on like waste yarn, right? Those like silicone waste yarn substitutes. And then I can add my length and then Kitchener it together. And I hope that that works out because otherwise I'm gonna end up re-knitting that whole ribbing, which I really don't wanna do because it took a very long time. And I did this surprisingly stretchy bind off, which also took me a long time. And I'm like, I don't really want to redo any of that work. I almost feel like I could have been back to the ribbing if I just unraveled it instead of all the research trying to figure out how to cut it. But you know what? This is what we do, right? As knitters, we make more work for ourselves trying to do less work. That just is what it is. And so that's what I'm gonna do. So I will update you next time on how this has gone. Hopefully I have a finished object to show you. But yeah, that is the Snowy Forest. And this pattern is probably one of the boldest sweater designs I've ever knit. I mean, these giant cables are just so impressive. They're kind of a pain to knit, I'm not gonna lie. There's some weird like increase decrease action. By the time I got to like the second or third of the big cables, I just started doing like make with a backwards loop. I was just like, I'm not sure what strand of, I don't know what, and like there are videos, but they're videos with no sound. And I was like, this is very serious in a way that I am not. So I'm like, a backwards loop feels fine for what I'm trying to do. So that's what I'm gonna do. And it worked out just fine. You probably couldn't even tell that I used a backwards loop somewhere in those cables, right? Exactly. All right, so that's that. Now we're gonna move on to, let's do my twists and turns shawl. So in October, I commenced my first Stephen West mystery knit along, and I was ill prepared for what was going to occur. I was ill prepared. I did have a bit of a panic in late August, where I realized that I had committed to this knit along. I had never really paid much attention to who Stephen West was. I heard about him from my knitting group last year, but was like late to the party, didn't understand what the MCAL was about, didn't know, like I was like, you're knitting it without knowing what's happening? Like, that doesn't sound great. And just kind of was like, no thanks, I'm good. But then in August, I thought, what if like, this is like beyond my knitting skills. I've like committed to this thing and like, what if I can't do it? So I did what every normal person does. And I decided to knit a different shawl as a warm up to the MCAL. So I knit the Winter Light shawl and, you know, as you do. But I'm happy that I did because I love that shawl. I love it so much. It came out beautifully and it kind of started a little bit of an obsession. I'm not gonna lie. It started a little, we'll talk more about that later, but like, so once the MCAL started, I was pumped. I ordered my kit off of Stephen and Penelope. It was like the Walk something Greyhound. I can't remember. But it was basically like 2 tones of gray and then like this mustard. And then I took a look at my Winter Light shawl and I thought, well, hang on, my Winter Light shawl is kind of gray adjacent and mustard. So I was like, am I just making gray and mustard sweaters and shawls now? Because that doesn't seem like the best way to enhance one's wardrobe. So then I decided, okay, I'm not gonna make another gray and mustard shawl, but what I can do is swap out the mustard for hot pink, because I had been seeing skeins of La Bien-Aimée As If like all over the internet, and I was obsessed and was like, I have to have it. So when I bought my kit, I just also had them slide in a skein of that, and as it was making its way across the ocean, my brain was like, use that. Thanks, brain, because that was exactly what I needed to do. So without further ado, This is clues 1, 2, 3. You know what? Why am I even trying? I don't even know. I was just, stuff would show up every Thursday and I would just start knitting it. So I don't even know what numbers they are. But I will tell you that I have the center panel finished. So that is this panel. It is by far my favorite part of the whole shawl. I loved doing these like braids and like the simulation of the knit stitch, but like in giant relief. Loved it. And then I finished my wings, my little bat wings. A couple of days ago, I stayed up until like 2 a.m. because I was like, I need to be done with the wings. I need to finish this shawl. I'm over it. So finished that. And now I am on the final portion and I'm actually gonna do the early exit. I know that there are folks who like did the full pendant and I think it looks really good on a lot of the shawls that I've seen. And I've also seen a bunch of like alternative endings. I think for me, I just don't want it to have the shape that it ends up with. So I think I'm gonna do the section that he shows and then the early exit and kind of call it a day. And I think that'll be fine. The only thing I'm worried about is that I tried it on the other day and I'll try it on now too, so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about. It kind of hangs funny. And I don't know if that's because of like how heavy the yarn is. The yarn's actually like very weighty. The walk is like very weighty. And actually I didn't really give you a good up close, but this is Greyhound and Moraine. So I stayed up to buy the kit so that I wouldn't miss it and was so excited. And when it came, I screamed and I did a whole like unboxing and didn't take one picture of the yarn in the skein with the name showing. So I don't actually know which color is which. One of them is Moraine and one of them's Greyhound, but I don't know which one. But you can kind of see, and like here, I'll try to, like it just kind of is draping a little bit weird. And so I thought, well, this is awkward. Like the bat wings kind of hang in a way that I don't know if I love that. It's also not blocked, so I'm not making any like major decisions because like blocking does wonders for all sorts of things. But then I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll try to wear it, you know, more like a shawl, like a little scarfy thing. And like, that's actually looking better than it looked the other day. But it also is a little bit weird. So I don't know. I don't know how wearable this one's gonna be. I've enjoyed knitting it. I absolutely enjoyed the whole like cowl experience for sure. And I feel, I don't know. I think like to me, that was like the main point. And I love my colors. I think they're gonna go really well with like the rest of my gray and black wardrobe. But I am kind of like hesitant about like how it's gonna fit. And I hope that once it's got all of its pieces and it's nice and blocked, it'll end up being a little bit more the shape that I would like it to be. Maybe I can block it into the shape that I would like it to be. We'll see. So anyway, that is the Twists and Turns by Stephen West. And I don't know, I feel like I probably will be done with this in a couple of weeks. I'm not really rushing it. There's no deadline to me to make it or to do anything with it. So it gets done when it gets done. But I am still enjoying knitting it. I know I said I was over it, but I mostly just mean like I'm excited about other things. So I need it to be finished so that I can focus more on like the other things. But like also I am enjoying like the final parts of it. So, okay, so let's move on to another beautiful project. And this is, oopsie, the Promenade Blouse by Caidree. So you can see, hopefully, that it has very subtle striping. And the stripes actually, whoops, sorry about that. You got a good up close look at my little hair. The striping actually comes from holding mohair and a DK weight, I believe. I think it's a DK weight together. And then only holding, actually, you know what? I'm not even sure if that's true. I might be leading you astray. It is definitely two different weights of yarn that create the striping effect, but I'm not sure if she tells you to hold the DK and the mohair or if I just decided to do that. I can't remember. It's been a while. I started this in the summer like a nutter, because why would you start a cashmere mohair? This is what happens. My brain is like, I'm so excited to make this thing. And then everything around me is like, but not now. Why would you knit that right now? And I'm like, why wouldn't I? So I was literally at the beach at one point in the middle of the summer knitting on this. Then it hit like 95 and I was like, okay, but for real though, this needs to go in the closet. So it did. It went in the closet. But this is a very special yarn. It's not special because of what it is. It's special because of how old it is. So I am not a hoarder. We do not use that term in this craft house. I'm a collector, dang it. So I collect and have collected many, many skeins. All of these baskets and bins behind me, and the ones that you can't see, are full of yarn and fabric. So, but anyway, this actually served me well, and I feel justified in my collecting, because when I saw this pattern, I was gonna make it in black. Basically, I love black. We'll also talk about that. But then I thought, no, let's not keep just knitting black garments, because really. So then I said, okay, if I can find enough yarn in my stash in the right weight, I'll use that color. And lo and behold, so what is this? This is Knit Picks Capretta, the OG. So Knit Picks currently has a Capretta on their website, but it's a superwash. This is 15-year-old Capretta, back when it was not superwash, and it is in the color turmeric. So I saw this, read through the pattern. I sometimes actually do that, which has never failed me. And sometimes I don't do it, and it always fails me. So read your patterns, folks. But anyway, I found this and I said, okay, great. Got my yarn, and I thought, oh, I don't have any mohair though. Like, the whole point of this is that I need a mohair. So I went to my local yarn stores, couldn't find a comparable color, but I had been listening to a bunch of UK knitting podcasts, and they were talking about whatever this wool warehouse was, like every episode. And I was like, I wonder if they ship to the US. So onto the internet I went, and I said, hey, wool warehouse, do you have a color that is like this and like some kind of mohair? And they said, yeah, we've got Drops Kid Silk Haze in curry. Meant to be. So placed my order. It showed up like 3 days later. Meanwhile, tell me why stuff like gets shipped from California and takes like 2 weeks. Anyway, nevertheless, I had my mohair, I had my Capretta, put them together, and it came out as this beautiful, like light, fluffy, subtle, stripy blouse. So currently I am at the hem. So I should be done with the hem relatively soon. And then I've got some sleeves. I'm probably gonna also make those sleeves 3/4 length. Despite my torso being of miniature size, I have incredibly long arms. That probably doesn't even look like anything. They're very long, very, very long. So what I make up for in body length, I usually, like if I do a full length arm, is like the rest of the fabric that I've saved by not having a torso. So I do like to crop my sleeves. I like them to be kind of like, what is it, jewel length? Is that where this is? No, I think that's right. I don't know. Not full length, we'll call it that. Not short sleeve and not full length, whatever that is in the middle. I feel like it's jewel length. I'm gonna go with that. I'm committing to it. It's jewel length. But yeah, so that is gonna be done relatively soon. The good news is that it also is not deadline knitting, because Wisconsin, where I am, is like a 6-month winter kind of place. So today it's like 54 degrees and it's basically December almost. I don't know, like, why? Please just be fall, right? And really we should just be winter at this point. Like, I understand that the equinox hasn't happened and like, but like December in Wisconsin should be cold. Now, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. I have absolutely been outside taking walks and like frolicking because like you don't lift a gift, you don't look a gift horse in the mouth, but I also want to wear my sweaters and my shawls and my coats and my boots. And I can't really do that when it's 55 degrees. It's that for somebody from Wisconsin. So I just realized like how absurd that probably sounds to people from like warm climates. Cause like you probably think 55 is cold, but like here it's warm. And so I can't wear all those layers because it's very uncomfortable. So I need it to get to like 30 before I can put on like the things that I want to wear. So I think maybe in 2 weeks it might get there, but also in 2 weeks I'll be in Boston. So like maybe Boston can do what Wisconsin's not doing and just be cold. Anyway, so I will be able to finish that and wear it probably through like next May. So it can be finished anytime in the next like 5 months. It'll be fine. Okay, last thing I want to show you in terms of my in progress projects. Okay, so I have been watching, as I mentioned, an absurd number of podcasts. And one of the ones that I started with was Amy Palco's The Meaningful Stitch. She mentioned last year around her birthday that she likes to knit herself a birthday sweater. And I thought that was so charming and just like such a great gift to give yourself. And it never has occurred to me. I do knit things for other people, like Christmas presents, birthday presents, whatever. Although now I'm not really doing that anymore because I've decided that like selfish knitting feels better for me than like knitting that people don't necessarily appreciate. So I always appreciate my knitting, especially if I finish it properly. So I decided this year for my birthday, I was gonna give myself the gift of a shawl. And why not make it a Stephen West? Y'all, I went from like, who is Stephen West and why is everybody knitting all of his shawls to knitting one in September, starting another one in October, and then starting another one in October for December. And I'm going to come back to it because that's not even the end of it. It is so much worse than what I just said. It's so much worse. But also, like, look at this. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. This is the Slipstravaganza by Stephen West. You can see I have made a lot of progress. I mean, you don't know that because you didn't see what I started with, but you know that I started. So from the beginning to here, that's a lot of progress. But yeah, I started it right before the twists and turns because in my mind, I thought, well, I'm just going to have so much free time. Like the clue's going to come out. I'll knit it in a day. And then what am I going to do for 6 days? Of course, if y'all did the twists and turns, you know that unless you knit like lightning, there is no downtime. So I didn't get very far. So like now I am making quite a bit of progress. I think I'm on the next section, which is, I don't remember what it's called. I don't know. Wait, hold on. I have a paper. Look at that. Checks. I'm on section 4, the check section, which you barely can see. I just started the slip stitches. But there's that section for like 24-ish rows. And then I think there's a triangle section and then there's the border. So this is destination knitting, kind of destination knitting. It's meaning I'm taking it with me on my birthday and I'm going somewhere for my birthday, but this is actually deadline knitting, right? Because I have to block this. And I'm not trying to block this at my friend's house, like on her floor where she and her partner are. So this has to be finished and blocked before I get on a plane on December 8th. I have a lot of shawl left. So like this has been taking up most of my focus for the past couple of days since I've like actually started calculating like, wait a minute, how many sections oh no, like, oh dear. So I will also, when I'm done with this, be getting back to this to just try to crank out as much of that next section as I can. But I am loving this so much. It's so pretty. And it was the shawl when I flipped through his whole catalog that caught my eye first. In fact, I was going to do this instead of the winter lights, but I read a bunch of comments with people saying that it was a really big shawl and it took them a really long time. And I thought, well, I don't want to knit a huge shawl and then do the cowl, which is probably going to be a huge shawl. Like that seems terrible. But so far it's not too bad. I mean, I think that, you know, that border is probably going to be pretty brutal. So I'm really trying to crank through as much as possible, but I love it. So let's talk about the yarn, because this is my third Stephen West shawl. Now, as much as I love hand-dyed yarn, locally sourced, right? Farm to needle skeins, those are not cheap, right? And so far, this is shawl number 3. So like if you need 3 to 5 skeins, they're $30-something a skein. That's very pricey for a shawl, right? So for my birthday shawl, I thought, well, this is just like a fun thing that I want to do for myself. I wonder if there's like a different yarn that I could try that I haven't tried before that's more economical as like a potential for like future shawls, depending on like how I like it. So I settled on Holst Supersoft. It's a recommended yarn for this pattern by Stephen West. And I knew people who had used Holst Supersoft last year for shawlography, and there were kits for it for this year's Twists and Turns. So I thought, all right, well, there's enough people using it that like it's probably fine. And I've also heard folks in the UK say that like it blooms. And so I thought I'm going to give it a shot and just kind of see what happens. So the best thing about this is that the colors are exactly what I wanted. And I think that's one of the benefits of Holst, is that it just has such a wide range of colors. So very quickly, the purple here is thistledown. This cream color is nougat. The gray is charcoal. And then this lovely green, which here, I'll do this one, it's easier to see, is actually called pea green. So pea green soup is usually not a positive, but I think in this case it is a positive. I have to say, so as much as I love the colors and I love the pattern and I think it's working up really nicely and I think it will end up being a very lovely shawl, I've heard so many people talk about how nice it is to knit with Holst Supersoft, and I was really excited to try to knit with it. And I found it kind of dry and crunchy. Now I know from like other people's experiences that has a lot to do with the spinning oil being left in, and that's what makes it so cheap. I think each ball of this in US dollars is like $3 or something. It's like roughly $3 a ball, which is like for a whole shawl. I mean, I don't think I'm even going to use 10 skeins, and that would be like $30, right? So it's like $200 for a shawl of this size, or $30, right? Like you can't, I mean, I'm not complaining, right? It's a great deal. The fabric that it makes before you block it though is very rough and scratchy. And I actually found that sliding my stitches on the needle was difficult for the needles I was using initially. So I actually bought specialty needles for this, again, because it's my birthday and I thought, like, treat yourself, you know. So I got the Addy Turbo Rocket Squares. I think that's what they're called, something like that. And I was having trouble sliding the stitches. Now, part of that could be because those needles are textured, and I'm also not used to square needles, and like there's a whole host of things, but I just found it hard to use. And so I ended up having to like transfer stitches to other needles to free up these needles, which I have no trouble sliding this yarn on. So like it could have been a combination of the texture of those needles, but also even on this, it just doesn't feel as nice to knit with it. And part of that might be the colors. I've kind of heard that like the colors can have like a different feel to them. So, you know, that's something I'm keeping my eye on, because I did think to myself, like, am I gonna knit like a bunch more stuff in this, because I'm not loving the like knitting experience. And like it's not for me just about the garment. Like I do like the feel of like the needles I'm using and the yarn I'm using and like whatever hand cream I put on, right? Like it's like a whole thing. But I have a whole cone of the graphite because I was planning to knit a sweater. So I bought a cone. And I have a bunch of accent colors to go with the cone. So like the Holst is not going anywhere anytime soon. But I am really like crossing my fingers that the blocking process will create the softer fabric that I've been promised by the internet. But yeah, so this hopefully I will be done with in a week. I'm trying to, that you're watching me try to like visualize a calendar because I can't remember what day it is. Literally have no clue. I don't know what day it is. But yeah, I'm gonna just say a week because that sounds right. I'm gonna be done in a week, and then I want to block it, and then hopefully it'll be ready to go so that I can get on the plane with it. That's the hope. Okay, so those are my whips. Let's move on to acquisitions. But I'm not going to do on this channel acquisitions the way that a lot of people do them, because to be honest, I buy a lot of yarn. Like it's actually kind of ridiculous. Like it's retail therapy, but also like I don't know. I just like buying yarn. So I buy a lot of yarn, and I think that if I just sat here and talked to you about all of the yarn that I'd purchased since the last episode, it would be incredibly boring. So what I'm going to do instead is pick a skein or two or three, and then just talk to you about that yarn. And like, you'll eventually see the stuff that I buy as I knit it, or not, because maybe 15 years will go by. Maybe 15 years will go by until you'll never know that I purchased like 8 bags of yarn. And that's actually just like kind of a little mini exaggeration, but not really, because behind me is at least that many bags full of stuff I've purchased since August. And there's no way I'm casting all of that on in the next year, like even a little bit. So anyway, but what I wanted to do is shout out a local farm called Galpaca Farms here in Madison. And I'm gonna tell you a little story. So my friends, Madison Sheep and Wool happened a couple of months ago, and my friends had planned to go to Galpaca to see the alpacas, and I was terrified. I was like, I don't want to go. They're really scary. I don't like them. Like they're mean. And my friends are like, you're afraid of alpacas? And I was like, yes. Yes, I am. Don't shame me. Yes, I am afraid of alpacas. Thank you very much. And then we got to the farm, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. Those are the ones that have my hair. No, those ones are fine. It was llamas. It's the llamas that I'm scared of. I don't like the llamas. They're very mean, and they were very spiteful last year, so. But not the alpacas. I love the alpacas. So once we got that cleared up, the owner at Galpaca was like, oh, do you want to feed them carrots? And I was like, yes. So we got a bunch of carrots, and we went out to the little alpacas, and I had just purchased a bunch of yarn. And so the owner was like, oh, like this is the owner of the fiber that you just bought. And I said, oh, wonderful. So I walked up to Caidree and I said, hey, Caidree, do you want a carrot? And she just looked at me and was like, and I was just like, oh, kind of uppity. And I said, okay. Well, I'll come back to you. You're clearly having a moment. Come back to you. So I fed carrots to like everyone else, including her 2 kids. And she still wouldn't eat my carrot. I was so mad. I don't know why. Maybe she was jealous of my hair, although it didn't look like this. I don't even remember what my hair looked like. She definitely had a better hair day than I was having that day. So I don't know what was going on. But she would not eat my carrot. She was very surly. I was very sad about that. But then I told her I bought your fiber, thinking maybe that would help with the carrot, and it didn't. She didn't care about that either. But anyway, this is the yarn that I got. As you can see, it is black. It's 70% Caidree, 15% bamboo, and 15% merino. So it is a sport weight yarn. And if you want to see the little surly alpaca that this comes from, that's Caidree. I mean, as much as I'm like, you know, talking crap about her, she's pretty cute. She's pretty cute. She's really cute in person too. Just maybe she doesn't like carrots. Maybe she's a celery kind of alpaca. Do they eat celery? I don't know. But so yeah, I had been looking for black yarn to make a shawl for months. And the reason is because I looked through my wardrobe. So this is also when I was like initially making my Stephen West. I was looking in my wardrobe and I thought, I really just need a black shawl or cowl or something. Like, how do I not have one of those? And I like dug through everything, and there's not one black shawl, scarf, cowl, kerchief, nothing. I don't know. I don't like, in the entire 30 years I've been knitting, I have never made myself a black neck covering. So I said, well, I got to fix that. And of course, my first default was like, let me go get some Rios. And then the people were like, that's not a thing. And I was like, that's absolutely a thing. I went on the Rios website and I'm like, that's. And then I talked to a shop owner here like months later after my hunt for black sport weight yarn, or even worsted, or literally anything other than fingering weight. And she said, oh yeah, they don't produce black. Like it's like once every 5 years because they don't think people knit with black yarn. And I said, aha, well, this will explain my conundrum. And I kind of feel like maybe that's why I don't have a black neck covering, because like I hadn't really thought very much about it, but I don't see a lot of black yarns usually where I live. And so I started to like think about why wouldn't people want to knit with black yarn? And then all these podcasts that I've been watching for the last like 6 months popped up in my head. And I thought, oh, everybody keeps talking about they don't like knitting with black yarn. I said, maybe I'm the weirdo. So my eyesight is still pretty good. It's going. And the more I knit, like, you know, in the, you know, wee hours of the morning and in the evenings in front of the TV, I'm probably not helping it along. But I'm not having a ton of problems seeing my stitches. But I have heard that is like a common complaint for a lot of people, where like if you're not knitting in natural daylight, it's difficult to see your stitches. And so I'm wondering if like that complaint has like reached the dyers. I also think part of it too, and this is something that we talked about at my local knit night, is that like a lot of people are like very fixated now on hand dyed yarn, and it's just very difficult to hand dye a solid black yarn. And I also don't know if they want to. Like I don't know how interesting that would be for them, because we do have Knit Circus here, is a local yarn dyeing company. And I did talk to the woman who works there as well, and she did mention like that they had a couple of skeins, but they weren't like solid black. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. So yeah, black yarns feel like a thing that like commercial yarn companies do, but you don't necessarily get a lot of like indie dyers or other folks that will like produce like a good quality black yarn. So I was super pumped to get the Caidree, because even though it's got a little tinge of brown, it's black enough for me to count as black. And it's just really pretty, soft, drapey yarn. So yeah, so that's my little like acquisition spotlight. Galpaca Farms, and you too can feed a surly alpaca a carrot or not. Okay, so what am I working on next? I don't really need to start anything new. In addition to all of the things that I showed you today, I also have all those things I told you were hidden in places that we shan't speak of. But I do have some winter plans, and they're ridiculous. My name is Sarah, and I'm a Stephen West fanatic, is what's happening, right? So I have completed my winter lights. I am almost done with my twists and turns. I will be done with my Slipstravaganza. Oop, one moment. Oh, you're getting another shot of my hair. Okay, great. Sorry, my battery was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what are you doing? So I will also be finishing my Slipstravaganza, so that's 3. And then I committed to a cowl with Mandy from Mouse's Makes. They're gonna be running a Starflake knit along over there starting January 1st. I don't know how to brioche, and it seemed like a great opportunity to learn brioche in the most like trial by fire way. Like, let's not just do like a brioche swatch or a cowl or something. Let's do a full Stephen West shawl. So anyway, that's coming up in January. And then a person at my knit night and I decided that we were also going to do the Painting Honeycombs shawl. So that's coming up in February. We figured dead of winter in Wisconsin, what else are we going to be doing? So I'm pretty excited about that. And then Stephen West was like, don't you want to do the hybrid knit along? And I was like, no, I don't. No, thank you. I already have a shawl of yours on the needles. Thank you very much. And then I was like, oh, but look at the Aurora cabin shawl. It's really pretty. So as much as I was not going to do it, I then saw the pattern and it's really stunning. And I thought, I'm going to be in Montreal on the 26th of December. What if I went to a local yarn shop in Montreal and bought the yarn for this? And then it was like a vacation holiday. And so that's happening also. And I'm going to start it on December 26th in my like Airbnb. So there's that. And then you might be thinking, well, hang on, were you just talking about like not having a black shawl, neck covering, etc.? None of these things are solids? You're correct. Well spotted. So Caidree is going to actually be used to make yet another Stephen West. I'm going to be making the Basketweaver Shawl. When that pattern came out, I screamed. And I was like, that's getting made like immediately. Now the joke was on me because just like with the Slipstravaganza, here I was thinking I'm gonna have like nothing but time while I'm working on this MCAL. So I can absolutely be also knitting 2 other Stephen West shawls at the same time. Clearly that did not happen. But I am gonna start the Basket Weaver probably like before the hybrid knit along. I don't even know, folks. I don't know what's happening. I don't know. That's like 7 shawls in like 6 months. But you know what? I can do it. That's positive thinking, right? That's all that we need to get impossible things completed. And never mind the fact that I'm also still knitting like 2 sweaters, and I've also got a bunch of stuff we haven't discussed because I'm pretending like it's not there. And I started the Pearl Soho half triangle square stripey version, which I'm not working on at all because like I don't have any like not time to knit on it. Like I have enough projects with enough stockinette or garter stitch in them that like that's what I'm working on when I'm like watching TV and like doing mindless things. So that's just sitting also, but that's also like not literally like not important to finish anytime soon. Like if I finished it by next year, it would be fine. And even then, I don't even know if I care to finish it then. Just something to have in case I was knitting like very complicated things. So yeah, please send me finishing energy. Maybe also send me some like, I don't even know. Just, I need to stop making shawls. That being said, in the summertime, I was on a base layer kick where I was knitting like bras and camisoles and like tank tops. I wish I was doing that now because the reality is that in the spring, that is what I'm going to wear. Like I'm probably going to finish these shawls just in time for it to be spring and it'll be too warm for me to wear them. And I'll be like, I don't have any camisoles. And then I'll be knit. So I'm like a season behind. But I also just decided I don't really want to like plan my knitting in that way. Like, I don't know. There's something about being excited about the thing that you're knitting while you're knitting it. And I did try for a couple of years to try to like knit a season ahead. And I'm just like not inspired by that. So like now it's like I see a pattern and I buy the yarn and then I don't start it. I'm kidding. I mean, really, I don't start most of them. But like sometimes I do. Like the Snowy Forest is like an older pattern, but I saw the pattern and immediately saw the yarn and like started it like within a week. So sometimes that does happen. So yeah. So I'm not going to worry too much about base layers. They will come when they come. They're also smaller and like less knitting. So I feel like I could get more of them done in the spring anyway than like these giant shawls that I'm knitting on. And then all I can think about is like future winter me, like 2023 winter me is going to be so excited to have all these shawls, right? Like I'll have 7 beautiful, different colored shawls. Hopefully, I may have to be very mindful of my color palettes because like I was also kind of thinking about that. Like, oh, I hope I don't start just knitting the same shawl over and over again with like different like patterns, but like the same colors. So I have to be very careful about that. But yeah, I'm a shawl knitter. I did not used to be. I think I knit like a handful of shawls in my whole life. And now I'm making up for that. And I almost feel like part of me wants to knit like every one of his shawls, but that's pure insanity. So I'm not going to commit to that, but I'm getting close. That's a lot in like 6 months. So we'll see. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Hopefully it wasn't too rambly and random, but that's also literally me. So, but yeah, join me next time for more adventures in Shenanigans and over planning and Stephen West. And until then, happy knitting. Bye.